Hi everyone, I am Maicon Steuernagel and this is another OiC Summer with the Psalms reflection. If for whatever reason you can't make it to our Sunday service at Maicon Church, these videos are here to encourage and help you to continue thinking, reflecting, and challenging yourselves. So here goes another reminder for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Instagram or keep updated. And these days we are all about the Psalms, which are this collection of songs / prayer / poetry that we have in our Bibles, which is great. I love them. I love the Psalms. But to be honest though, the Psalms can also be a bit depressing. Some of them are cheerful and sort of, upbeat, but a whole lot of them are basically about how miserable or lost or desperate the author is feeling. And I'm not sure how well prepared we as a culture are to deal with that kind of thing. Maybe I should speak for myself first. I am married and I have this stubborn tendency to always think that I have to fix stuff. So when Carol shares a concern or a worry or a problem with me, I very quickly shift into a how can I solve this mindset. The problem, of course, is that it's not always something that I can solve. And it's not always something I'm even supposed to try and solve. Sometimes what I really should do is shut up and listen. And that's it. But it's difficult. Because if there is something going on that's bothering her, I want to solve the problem. Because problems are meant to be solved, right? or at least I want to try and find a way of solving the fact that she's bothered or upset. But there's times in which you can't. There's times in which good food and wine just won't do it. And I have to let her be upset and live through it. I have to let her lament. I have to actively work against my tendency in order to allow that. But I also have to work against the wider cultural mindset that feeds that tendency in a few different ways. One way in which it feeds that is that we live in a constant overdrive of cosmetic reality. I remember when I was a teenager and we would have discussions about how people on TV and in magazines sort of contributed to unrealistic expectations for life and wealth and to an unhealthy body image. Because those people, we pondered, they were the odd few that didn't represent the majority of normal people. Then slowly we started finding out that you could actually edit those images. Right? You could Photoshop people's bodies and make them look different than they actually were. Can you imagine that? That you can actually edit an image like that? Back then, that was a big thing. But fast forward 20 years, and every Joe or Joanna can edit their image with the phone that they carry in their pockets. So we'll take a selfie and edit it. We'll take a picture of our house and edit it. We'll take a picture of our food and edit it. We'll take a picture of our hamster and make it somehow look glamorous. And on the same phones, we are bombarded literally every minute by professional and amateur projections of an unreal reality. And we know that, but the level is so intense that our brains just can't manage to filter it all properly. And it messes with our expectations. And that's another aspect of our cultural inability to deal with lament. Just the sheer speed in which things happen and are expected to happen. Which means that we are used to wanting and expecting quick solutions. Sure, we expect problems to happen. We're not that naive, but we expect the problems to be solved quickly. And if they aren't solved quickly, we can at least shift our attention to some other big problem happening somewhere or some new supposed development in that same problem. Something is supposed to be happening all the time. What we don't know how to do is just sit with it. The Christian culture hasn't always been very good at this either. I remember one moment of sort of exceptional clarity once in my late teens. A friend of mine in church was going through a very tough time in her family. So during our evening service one day, during worship, during song, she came up to the front of the church where there was an open space between the last pew and the altar. And even though this was the front of the church, this was sort of a private corner. So she came there and she knelt on the floor and she was praying and crying. And in a matter of minutes, there was a stream of young, well-intentioned Christians moving towards her. And I know they meant well, but I saw what was about to happen. So I got up and I went to where she was and I told the people that had already reached her to sort of move back, and I sort of signaled the others to not come. And I was a youth leader, so they kind of respected my "I got this" kind of signals. And also they probably thought that I was going to do what they were all hoping to do, help her feel better, right? By saying something that really applied to their situation, right? Or give her the right Bible quotes and say that God loved her and that everything was going to be all right. But that's not what I went there to do. Really, all I had in mind at that moment was that I had to shield her from precisely all that stuff. Because she knew all the Bible quotes and the stuff that people might tell her. And I knew what was going on in her family, and I knew that it was not going to be all right, at least not for a long while. So what I did was just to stay close enough for her to know that I was there, and so that I could act as a kind of a human shield, but also far enough that I could give her space. And that was it. I didn't say a word. We knew each other well enough that she would say so if she wanted me to come closer and talk. But at that moment, she needed to cry and pray. I guess it was a rare moment of inspiration for teenager Maicon, right? Because the very same Bible that all those well-intentioned young Christians were hoping to use to sort of push that girl back to her feet, that same Bible actually has no issues with her taking her time to kneel and cry. I cry aloud to the Lord. I lift up my voice to the Lord for mercy. I pour out before him my complaint, before him I tell my trouble. When my spirit grows faint within me, it is you who watch over my way. In the path where I walk, people have hidden a snare for me. Look and see, there is no one at my right hand. No one is concerned for me. I have no refuge. No one cares for my life. I cry to you, Lord. I say, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. Listen to my cry, for I am in desperate need. Rescue me from those who pursue me, for they are too strong for me. Set me free from my prison, that I may praise your name. Then the righteous will gather about me because of your goodness to me. This was Psalm 142, and it's what we often call a psalm of lament. Perhaps we need to relearn how to lament and how to allow lament. We need to create space for unedited images, even for blank images. We need to allow the pace to slow down for sorrow. We need to develop and allow a language of lament in a world that seems to have no time for it. This pandemic we are living through has in many ways highlighted just how difficult this is for us. We frantically follow the news for some new advancement in treatment, for a vaccine within a year, even though they usually take a decade, for numbers that will tell us that we can start moving out of this and get on with life. But suffering is a part of life. Sorrow is a part of life. And when we don't know how to lament, we may very well be avoiding life itself and maiming our humanity and our spirituality. So we need to learn how to express and how to listen to lament, to listen to each other's pain without trying to fix people and give them holy advice. We need to learn how to allow pain. Does the tradition of lament within the Psalms have something to maybe teach us in this regard? As I listen to Psalm 142, I see some important things about what we might call the process of lament. The first thing is that we need to learn how to express our lament to God. The book of Psalms is full of laments, and the psalmists are not shy of giving time and language and shape to their sorrow. Perhaps even more important is to realize in the Psalms that expressing our lament to God is not the same thing as demanding a solution. The psalmist in the psalm we just heard today, it does ask for rescue, but he also allows time for his lament. He doesn't give his whole psalm over to the demand for a solution. And the psalm itself, it contains no solution. It doesn't present us with God's answer or even with the certainty that God will answer that specific request. In fact, the Bible is full of open ends. And if we want to be faithful to it, we need to acknowledge that there's nothing necessarily wrong with not experiencing solution to our sorrows. Not wrong with us in that sense. Sometimes the world is tough. Sometimes life is hard. But there is hope, and there is a need for hope. And I would argue that sometimes it is our very obsession with solutions that blinds us to hope. When all our attention and energy is devoted to the solution we expect, it will be there that we expect to see God. And not only is that ultimately a utilitarian understanding of the divine, it also blinds us to God's most exuberant expression of goodness, grace, and hope. That God is present in the lament. Not at the end of it, but in the lament and in the sorrow and in the pain and suffering itself. That God is present when and where it hurts and actually cares about why it hurts and how it hurts and not just with ending it. There's a difference, I think, between cheap hope that says everything will be all right and deep hope that grasps Christ's presence in our pain, so that he overcomes the realities of which our pain and our sorrow are integral. This deep hope, I believe, is expressed through the psalm. When the psalmist says, "Listen to my cry," when he invites God to come close, look and see, when he calls God his refuge. But the language that really stirred my heart was that of verse 3. When my spirit grows faint within me, it is you who watch over my way. God isn't waiting at the end of the road so that we can meet him once we put ourselves together and drag ourselves all the way to him. He is there when we're faltering, when our spirit is growing faint. And that is hope. That is Christ. That is Emmanuel, God with us. A spirituality that doesn't understand lament, that avoids sorrow, and that is more concerned with God's solutions than with his presence, will not recognize the incarnate Word of God that listens to prostitutes and touches lepers, the Christ crowned with thorns and pierced with nails, the Christ that resurrected in glory spends time with the pain of Peter's sorrow, the Christ who is present in your pain and sorrow, in my pain and sorrow. When my spirit grows faint within me, it is you who watch over my way. And maybe all we can do when we're in a place, in that place of sorrow and lament, is to kneel, pray, and cry, or to read this psalm to ourselves. Read one of the psalms of lament in the Bible and make the voice of the psalmist our own. Sometimes that's all we manage to do. Sometimes that is enough. When our spirit is faltering, when our breath is lacking, when our strength is waning, it is God who watches over our ways. It is God who is with us. May the Lord bless you. May He keep you. May He make His face shine upon you and into your lives. May He turn His face towards each and every one of you in all seasons of your life. And may He bring you peace, and may He bring you hope. Go in peace and serve the Lord joyfully.